We've invited Father Kevin Flaherty, who's a Jesuit priest, now based here in Chicago. He works with Jesuits who are in their first studies, so Jesuits who are preparing to become priests and brothers. But prior to that, he spent 25 years in Peru, working in a number of different realms of the Jesuit world down there, and has also worked in Hispanic neighborhoods here in the United States. So I want to invite Father Kevin up to offer a little kind of Ignatian reflection on immigration, I guess we could call it. Thanks. Woo! Yeah!
Thank you very much, and thank you for being here. It's so encouraging that you are here and that we are committed to working with our sisters and brothers. And we might just take a very brief, like 15-minute reflection and maybe end with a brief prayer, a blessing. And we can use the four tenets of Catholic social teaching: conversion, communion, solidarity, and evangelization. We had a party at our house, or really it was like a dinner about 2 weeks ago, and an extended family from the south side of Chicago who were very active, a couple of them, the adults, in our parish in Pilsen, which is a very Hispanic area here in Chicago. And it was a great gathering. They brought food, some of our guys put out food. There was about 6 little kids, sons and daughters. They were with a couple of the guys who don't really speak Spanish, and so they're just going away watching cartoons and laughing and cutting up. And we're talking and having this great time. At one point, talking to some of the guys, some of them about your age, there's a couple a little older, the nephews, and they were telling their stories of what they had to leave and how it cost so much to leave home, but there was literally no work. Of course, I didn't say, well, you have documents, right? No. And when they had left, with one of the guys who said, God, what beautiful, wonderful people. But they could be driving home and like that, the end of their family. Those little kids who are bilingual, who are just beautiful and growing, could lose their mom and dad. And those guys who are just struggling to do minimum work that they might have a life could find themselves shipped out tomorrow and dumped on the other side of the border. And that is our reality. What does it mean, conversion? For us, it means change of heart. Can I be converted to them? Do their lives matter to me and to us? And it's knowing that story. I have friends. I worked in Peru for a number of years, and about 6 or 7 years lived in a very, very poor neighborhood in Lima, Peru, and then would be back there almost every weekend. And my early years, I was very anti people leaving Peru. Peru for Peruvians, you got to stay for the struggle. And working with families and knowing the poverty and no escape, and working with people who say, I gotta go to Argentina, to Chile, to Spain, to the United States. Not because they wanted to, but they're economic refugees. With names, families, stories, to be converted to the other, to know what people live. That is so important. And that's the first stage for all of us, and that's what you're gathering to deepen that conversion that's already taken place. But to help others turn, change of heart, to see our brothers and sisters as people with names, apellidos, stories, hopes, dreams, as some of you might have, dreamers. That's what we want to do together. And that means we also are here in communion. Conversion and communion go together with solidarity and then evangelization. And I don't know if you remember back in July, the first time Pope Francis left Rome, he went to an island in the south of Italy called Lampedusa. And he didn't go to enjoy the sunshine and the beaches. He went because that is a place where African refugees, immigrants, come and first land there in the hope of finding a way into Europe. And we remember that Francis Jorge Bergoglio is a son of immigrants, that he has a special love, and in Buenos Aires would defend the immigrants. And there's many immigrant workers in Buenos Aires. So it's a natural when he arrived there that the first time he wanted to go out of Rome, where he went was to be with people, many, mostly non-Christian, who are seeking a better life. We know that he has spoken out against the globalization of indifference. The globalization of indifference. And by God, a lot of times, where does it start from? From our media centers, our culture, and the way we live, anesthetizing one another. In that sense, when he has spoken out, he said, we have become used to other people's sufferings. It doesn't concern them. It's none of our business. These, our brothers and sisters, seek to leave a difficult situation in order to find a little serenity and peace. They seek a better place for themselves and their families. But they found death. He was saying Mass on an upturned boat to represent the number of boats that have been lost trying to cross that sea. How many times to those who seek this life, they do not find understanding, do not find welcome, do not find solidarity, and their voices rise up even to God. When we speak of communion, we speak of being in union. And as the Pope did Eucharist there, made present that sacrifice, that death and resurrection, which is the hope of all people. He brought into communion all peoples who are struggling, who are crossing frontiers, who seek a more humane life for them and their children. Which brings us into solidarity, to stand with the other. And there are many ways into solidarity. Many of you have probably seen the movie Sin Nombre, story of immigrants coming out of Central America, crossing that Via Crucis, that way of the cross, of riding the rails going north. Sometimes with people throwing up food and water to them on the top of trains, sometimes pelting them with stones, and persecuted by gangs and police all the way to the border, where they then are so often taken advantage of, as you know, by traffickers who are controlled by organized crime. Enrique's Journey, that beautiful book, or the stories that some of us know from people of how they've traveled, of how they have been returned, and how they've lost life and found life. Our compassion, our understanding, has to be translated and transformed into action. Compassionate action. That's what you're doing here. It was only for me when I was working in the slums of Lima that I began to realize what a gift my grandfather gave us when he left that little town where there was not another plot of land to come to the United States. And I began to see my story is the story of the people coming today. That's all of our story. but I have to learn how to walk with the people who are living that today and work that we all might have a life of dignity. And that is a choice that leads me into action and a way of seeing the world and seeking to change it. In this process, we become evangelized. Evangelization is just picking up and figuring out what the deepest part of the gospel is. What's the spirit of Jesus? That's what it is. And in Latin America, for decades, we've talked about the poor evangelize those who go to work with the poor. They show us what it's about to live their faith. I would imagine that's what you find too. That their stories open us up, because their stories are so often a telling and a narrative within a life of faith. Our faith goes way back. Those Hebrew people who were trapped in slavery in a foreign land, and God heard their cry and led them out. So that even to today, when Jews gather to pray, remember we were once a poor, enslaved people called forward, and we too share that journey. Jesus, in the infancy narratives of Matthew, is brought to a different land because of persecution of Herod and has to come back. Jesus meditated and knew the words of the Hebrew scriptures: care for and protect the orphan, the widow, and the foreigner. And Jesus said he would be with us, especially in the least. So that when we encounter the least, the last person or the person today struggling for water in that desert in Arizona, the person today who's arriving to Chicago or Indiana looking for work, it's Jesus. Jesus come knocking. Jesus come asking. Jesus coming to tell us life is with us and calling us forward and out of ourselves to share our lives with others. So we ask God now to bless us, to bless all of those people who might be on the journey right now, be it through Mexico, be it through another country, maybe in the desert, maybe arriving. We unite our hearts to theirs, asking we might all continue a journey of conversion, that we might be in communion with the God of life, with one who chose to be with us, and whose voice cries out through those poor, who teaches us what life can be, and invites us to use our talents and gifts that all might have opportunity and promise. And in that we walk and stand in solidarity, not just in this country, but with people throughout the world. And we ask that we might live in that spirit of Jesus, who shows us life, who gives us life, who becomes present when we receive one another in his commandment of love. Amen.